We got some camp intel to talk about, some whispers, some nuggets. We got some bad injuries happening all around the country, some of which we've already talked about, and then there's some new stuff that's popped up. But I want to start with LSU. See, LSU does not work on my schedule. I have implored Brian Kelly, have your scrimmages on Saturday. It fits nice and neat into our calendar. Well, he won't do it. I'm beginning to think he's a bad fit down there, to be honest with you. But that's a joke. In all seriousness, they have a scrimmage tomorrow, as we're talking right now. So they have a Wednesday scrimmage. And what's interesting is, in the last 24 hours, of course, we've had news out of Baton Rouge. Miles Brennan, who was part of that three-way quarterback dance, well, he has exited, and so he's just leaving football. I don't really have much to say about that. What I do care about are the guys who are still there. So farewell, Miles Brennan. We got Jaden Daniels. We got Garrett Nussmeier. Those of you who have followed this thing or you've watched the show kind of closely, you know that Nussmeier has been sort of the slight betting favorite around here. But if you talk to folks around the LSU program, that's not the guy they believe would take the first snaps if the FSU game was tomorrow. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that. The first is he has missed a little bit of time due to an ankle issue. It's not, a huge deal, but he has missed a couple of days. I'm not sure that's what's decided this thing so far, and it's a long way from being decided. But the other part is Jaden Daniels is not a bad quarterback. There's a reason they took him. There's a reason he transferred to LSU. We knew this back in the spring. What I do believe, in talking to a couple of folks, is that maybe a little bit too much stock is being placed in where things stand right this moment. And what I keep being told, had two different people close to LSU who have kind of emphatically told me this. They've said, regardless of who it is, maybe it's Daniels, maybe it's Nussmeier, one day versus the next day. The Wednesday scrimmage is big. So make no mistake about that. The Wednesday scrimmage is big. But the thing I keep having emphasized to me is week 1 is not week 12. Week 1 is not our entire season. In other words, just because a guy takes the first snaps in the first quarter when we play Florida State does not mean that's the guy that's going to be on the field when we play Auburn, or when we play Alabama, or when we play Texas A&M down the line. We've seen that happen many times before. Some of these programs, like in Auburn, for example, they've got a workable first few weeks where they can afford for a quarterback battle, if it rolls this way, to spill into the regular season. Well, LSU doesn't necessarily have that luxury. They've got a formidable opponent in week 1, Florida State in New Orleans, for the record. And so, yeah, I think if it were to happen today, it probably is Jaden Daniels. I just think the margin's very small there. I mean, I think for all we know tomorrow, they could have a scrimmage down there, and if Nuss, A, looks like he's healthy, which we think he is, and then B, goes, 18 for 24, 2 touchdowns, really threads the needle, no bad decisions back there, it could be his job. I think that's how close it is down there. So let's keep an eye on that. Of course, we will probably have a lot more to say about that Thursday night, because between now and then, they will have another scrimmage. I want to draw your attention, ironically, to South Florida. I'm not going to give you a comprehensive Bulls practice report here, but there's something significant that's happened, and I feel like right off the top of the show, I want to point it out, because we spoke about it. You and I spoke about this in the spring, and it was in relation to Baylor. Remember Gary Bohannon? Remember how he was the quarterback for Baylor last year? And that's Miles. Hey, Miles. Bye, Miles. Gary Bohannon was the quarterback for Baylor last year. Now, in the Big 12 championship game, he didn't start for him. Blake Chapin started for him. But Gary Bohannon has been cited many times by Dave Aranda as being one of the reasons why Baylor was able to go as far as they went last year. Then you fast forward to spring. I cannot emphasize enough how incredible this story is. So Bohannon is neck and neck with Blake Chapin, and they're battling for the starting quarterback position. In the transfer portal era, just to get used to any time there's the faintest whisper of a quarterback battle, a coaching staff maintaining that illusion into the fall so they can keep their quarterback depth. Even if coaching staffs know a guy's running solidly ahead of another one, they have no incentive to tell him because they don't want the other guy to hit the portal. Well, Dave Aranda took the opposite approach. See, Dave Aranda preaches this whole person over player thing. And a lot of times when you hear coaches talk that way, the cynical side of you would think that's coach speak. Well, there's a way to disprove that. And it's exactly what Aranda did. Because when a situation arises where it would probably benefit your strict football interests to keep the wool over someone's eyes, Dave Aranda pulled Gary Bohannon in his office, or however he chose to do it, and he said, you are second best here right now. you are not our starting quarterback. Gary Bohannon had time then to hit the portal, and he went to South Florida. Yesterday, he was announced as the starting quarterback for South Florida this year. It's an amazing story. We pull for Gary Bohannon, but on the other side of that coin, I want you to keep that in mind, because that is not something that most folks out there are going to do. But anytime that you want to know who's real, we love being real around here. We call it Pate State material. Dave Aranda's Pate State material. Not because he talks a lot, but because he backs up what he says. It's easy to talk. It's easy to have these posters all over the football complex. It's a lot tougher when the decision that poster and that motto you claim to go by would entail is you weakening your roster. But Aranda allowed it to happen for the betterment of a person. I didn't want to overlook it. I wanted to mention that on the show tonight. So, I know we're not diving headlong into South Florida Bulls content, but I did want to congratulate Gary Bohannon and hat tip Dave Aranda. Let's go out to Southern Cal. Got some injuries mounting out there, and it's a few guys banged up. That's normal, man. This is camp. Everything this time of year sounds like that. No one's perfectly healthy. But Corey Foreman, who was the highest rated player in California 2 cycles ago, it was a big deal at the time when Clay Helton and his staff kept him home. Corey Foreman is banged up. He hadn't practiced in several days out there, and as you well know, as Lincoln Riley well knows, he's inherited defensive roster depth that is at best incomplete, if not outright inadequate. I'm talking about trying to compete on the national level now. Winning 6 games, they'll do that. But if you want to compete at a higher level than that, they don't have the depth. They don't have the overall high-level skill that they'll need. That's why they have a new coaching staff. So you got what you got in year one. Foreman's been banged up. Shane Lee, the Alabama transfer at linebacker, he's kind of been in and out. I didn't see today's practice report yet, but the USC injury situation, especially defensively, that's something to pay close attention to, because as you see on your screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on pod, let me tell you what the screen says. It says the over-under win total for Southern Cal is not 7.5, it's 9.5. So you lose 3 games, that under hits. If any of you are testing that market, if any of you are laying a shekel or 3 on that Pac-12 championship odds, being at plus 210, you need to know this stuff. USC, they are the only team in the country that opens against one of our favorite opponents. Number 1 rule on this show, do not lose to food. USC, week 1 versus Rice. I think they'll be okay there. But they quickly dive into not only conference play at Stanford, but week 3, they've got Fresno State and one of the better quarterbacks in America in Jake Haener, so you have to be ready. You don't take any of these things lightly, especially when you got injury concerns and depth concerns defensively. Keep an eye on that. Also, we talked the other night, if you'll remember, about the injury situation at Texas, and it's bad. There is no way to sugarcoat this. Isaiah Nair, especially the wide receiver, lost for the year. It is a big blow for them. Steve Sarkisian has confirmed that since you and I spoke Sunday night. They lost an offensive lineman too, but a guy they also lost but didn't lose him for the season is Roshan Johnson, the running back. And we spoke about him earlier this fall and talked about how he is the superior guy in pass pro in that entire running back stable. Better than Bijan, better than Keelan Robinson in that department. And I think that it may be overlooked a little bit. We had some of our national guys in the office here today, and I was talking to some of our Texas guys, and they said, Nair's a huge loss. Can't sugarcoat that, but don't overlook Roshan Johnson. That's a big loss too. And there's no guarantee. If you got a high ankle situation, you can tightrope it. Medical procedure terminology, we don't know. I just recite it because I read it off the screen. But when you tightrope it, it's never a certainty, is what I'm trying to say. It's never a certainty when you're coming off a high ankle that if a doctor tells you 4 weeks from now you can play, all of a sudden you just enter Monday of that week and voila, I'm good to go. Even then, you don't know how your body's reacting. Now, Roshan Johnson's a superior athlete. He's got access to the best medical treatment in the world. Even then, it's kind of a crapshoot. So they're not depleted at running back. They got really good options there. Just saying, every time you lose a guy that is as versatile as Roshan Johnson and as veteran as him, it does leave a mark. So I'll tell you the thing to pay attention to with Texas. Injuries are what they are. You cannot change them at this point. But remember last year, Steve Sarkisian's biggest beef with his staff, with himself, and with his team following the Oklahoma game was they got up big, then they blew that lead. He said, we never got our confidence back. I never got the team back. We were shot mentally, and we have to change that. That's all they talked about. Over the winter conditioning months and spring football and summer conditioning, they talked about getting that mental edge where they can face adversity, which is inevitable, and then we'll overcome it and we'll be better for it, or we'll respond better to it. Well, this is it. It doesn't always wait until the season. You got some really big injuries. Some people would call them crippling injuries. Some people like me sat here and said they're going to win less games this year because of these guys they just lost the other night. Well, you got to prove people like me wrong. And you've got to be able to overcome it. The team response, that Texas team response, how that locker room's responding right now, will speak volumes about how much progress they've really made out there. The injuries are the injuries. That stuff's going to happen. How do you respond to it? There are going to be some teams out there that have injuries happen, and it will completely torpedo their season. There are going to be some other teams out there that lose key players and end up better even then than you thought they were going to be. Why? Well, it's because, believe it or not, if you recruit at any kind of legitimate level, you got good enough players in your locker room if you use them the right way, if you develop them the right way. We just got to find out how far Texas has come.